It's been a long time since we talked, and we may repeat ourselves. And I'm hoping Carrie will get to the place where she can sort that out and eliminate some stuff and add other stuff. But it seems to me that as the inauguration was just about a week past, and this we've never had in my 83 years a situation where a candidate has been convicted of some terrible stuff, and he calls it political, but it seems that there was reason for him being convicted as a felon and a sexual predator and a fraudster with respect to his university and his charity and all manner of things. But the country seemed ready to elect him, and now he says he had a mandate, but I don't think he did, because he didn't win by that much, but he did win. And he's promising all sorts of stuff. But I think the thing that I'd like to put on this tape more than anything is the anger and disappointment and I guess just as we speak right here, and I don't think people are thinking about this very much, but there are literally millions of families who have members who are legally here, not legally here, green cards in the process, have dates of this, that, and the other thing. And for instance, in Chicago right now, people of migrants are not shopping because they're afraid that ICE or the police or somebody is going to come, and it's the separation. I can't imagine wondering if Maeve is going to be taken from Carrie and Joe because she was brought here and she's not legal, and family separation, the fear of among millions and millions of people, and it doesn't seem like anybody's pushing back very much. Now, there was an Episcopalian pastor who spoke directly to the president about having compassion and a heart with respect to this sort of thing, because not only migrants, but the demonization of race, the demonization of sexuality, the demonization especially of transgendered people continues. It continues among a significant number of Americans. We just got to do better than that, and it just sickens me. And I've never felt that way in 83 years, and I didn't agree with everybody that got elected, but this seems to be so extraordinary and awful that I just would like to go on the record about that. And I don't know, Stan, you have
just some historical footnotes. A lot of historians believe that the practice of family separation began in the late phases of slavery in the 19th century.
Yeah.
And that so long as the family was on one plantation, they were, working.
It was tolerable.
It was okay. But when they started to sell off family
for
members
profit
to further south, or to settlers heading west who wanted to build log cabins, buy a couple of slaves, and have the slaves do the work of their new settlement, say in Kansas or Nebraska, that's the straw that broke the camel's back. That is the
bridge too far.
The bridge too far, and that was the beginnings of the Civil War, because the Kansas-Nebraska War and the battle between settlers there, some coming from below the Mason-Dixie line, some coming from above the Mason-Dixie line, and they clashed. John Brown, for example, his thing was not in Virginia or Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. It was in Kansas, where he felt God-driven, duty-bound to end it. The other footnote is that I had a very interesting conversation with my son about gender and sex. His belief, because I poo-pooed the figures. I thought it was rigged. He said no. He thought there was a significant shift of black men and Latino men who moved from Biden 2020 to Trump 2024.
Because of that issue?
And he said that was the issue, that they were largely speaking not as, they were speaking in their capacity as parents raising children. And they thought that the Biden administration and Democrats in general in local elections had gone too far in normalizing social acceptance of transgender people, of normalizing gay culture and homosexuals, and that they did not want their children exposed to that, that enough was enough. And they thought Trump stood for at least a return
For their values.
to those values, particularly in those areas. And I never thought of it that way. And it made sense to me, because as a parent myself, I guess I probably would have felt the same way. But for him, it explained that drop off in the Democratic vote, largely attributable to men, and that somewhat more significant shift in Latino men's vote.
Yeah.
Not to,
I think you're right.
not to not voting, but from Democrat to Republican, from Biden to Trump. And I tend to think that was a big factor. And the other factor, which was that he was running against a woman of color who represented those transitions in terms of gender, in terms of those aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that Trump was successful at branding her.
You're talking about a perfect storm.
As the queen
You're talking
of
about
DEI.
a perfect storm.
He
Yeah.
even called her the DEI vice president. And once he could get that rolling, he could neutralize a lot of black and Latino males. I think that the vote in the black community was a drop off rather than actually voting for Trump. They just simply did not vote.
And that's like a vote for him.
Yeah, and that's why there was a significant. There was something like 15 million votes.
Trump is not the right guy, but
I can't bring myself
yeah,
to continue this.
I hear you.
And the other thing about Trump is that, and he won't ever acknowledge it, but we've never had a woman president in the United States.
Exactly right.
And his two opponents in 2016 and
she'd have been
in
number 2 black one,
2024
yeah.
were women.
Yeah.
Hillary was white, Kamala was black and Indian, and so he got the perfect situation for his rhetoric. Now, and that's why Joe Biden, I believe, felt that he could beat Trump. In his heart of hearts, he believed that if Trump ran against a woman again, like he'd run in 2016, that he'd beat her. So he kept coming out in his little feeble mini steps saying, I'm the only one who can beat Trump. I can't get off this ticket. You're making a mistake if you push me off. And they said, no, look what happened in the first debate that you had, and look what's happened to the numbers since, and look what's happened to the funds since, is a drop-off. So the Democrats were in this crazy situation where they had, now you take a guy, I think, and my favorite guy now is a Democrat by the name of Mark Kelly. He's a senator from Arizona. I like him. And he's a straight shooter. And he's as woke as I am. But he's not he's a bisexual white man from a swing state.
Bisexual.
Not bisexual. What do you call it?
Homosexual? Or
Hetero.
Hetero.
He's a
Oh, okay.
heterosexual. I'm sorry
Yeah.
for the camera. He's not bisexual. Yeah, that's a different kind of thing. He's a heterosexual white male from a swing state, and he talks a lot of sense. He just this morning
What's his
joined
name?
Mark Kelly.
Okay. Oh,
He's married to,
he's the astronaut.
He's married to the
He's
right.
the
He's an
astronaut.
he's an
Yeah.
astronaut.
Got it.
He's married to the former congresswoman
Yep.
who was crippled by gunshots at a rally, whose name escapes me right now.
Wow, that's a revelation to me. I had not known that he. I had not found him impressive, but I haven't been paying attention to him.
He's
either.
not impressive looking. He's a middle-aged white guy with a bald head. But so was Harry Truman. So was a lot of other
Isn't it the
people.
truth?
You don't have to have these George Clooney looks. I think.
Yeah.
I don't think Trump may have been a good-looking guy 25 years ago, but I don't.
He didn't get
consider him
elected
now.
on his looks.
He thinks he did.
well.
He thinks he did.
He thinks a
and he
lot of
thinks he's cute, which is it's kind of sad for a 78-year-old man. And you can tell by his official portrait as president, which he's already posed for, and which is going up in thousands, tens of thousands of embassies and post offices and airports around the world. He's got I call it a punk ass.
Don't mess with me look on his face.
This menacing man.
Yeah, menacing. Yeah.
But it makes him look like a little despot from a shithole country, reminiscent of Mussolini in Italy. He took the same kind of official photo. Hitler in Germany took that same kind of I'm the man. I'm the El Cadillo guy. I'm the like Franco in Spain. I remember traveling in Spain as a student in the 60s, and El Cadillo's picture was everywhere, and it was like he was the symbol. That picture was a symbol of what Spain wished itself to be: manly, tough guy, take no bullshit type of behavior. And so Trump sits down on day one to deliver on campaign promises and signs thousands of executive orders, including the release of criminals, of criminals who've attacked police officers, killed one died after the fact,
Heart attack.
from the experience, traumatized the lives
On
of
the
millions
day
of
of
people
certification.
on January 6, 2021.
And if Mike hadn't done what he did, it could have gone on and on and on. And he says, "I can't. I'm ceremonial. I don't have the ability to send electors back for or choose a set of electors that I'm going to listen to."
And he discharged his constitutional duty.
He did.
Now, do you think James David Vance will do the same thing?
Yeah, I don't think
Suppose
he doesn't
2028 we're in the same situation, and Trump says the 26th Amendment does not apply to me. It only since it was adopted after President Garfield served non-consecutive terms as president.
But what I'd say is
that it doesn't apply to
Trump would never have been
applies to
president
consent.
if he didn't have whatever TV program he had for several years,
Apprentice.
where he was in front of the public in a contrived fictional setting of sort of like wrestling. In other words, the outcome was scripted; it wasn't real.
And there's a backstory to that
Oh, yeah.
with Mark Burnett, because the ratings of The Apprentice were tanking, and they needed to do something sensational to bring it up. And they brought in all this "you're fired" kind of stuff, and and they changed and the ratings went back up.
Today on your front lawn, I picked up the Los Angeles Times. Now, the Los Angeles Times was a paper. The Sunday Times was a substantial paper, and the paper I just picked up looked like something you'd pick up at a mailer or something.
Right.
And you just told me they're charging $100 a month for that. In other words, the Walter Cronkite, L.A. Times, New York Times, gravitas, so to speak, the quality and acceptance of it as of the record of what's going on in the country is no longer. We now have a fire hose of stuff, and there's probably as much fact as fiction in all of it, and it is pouring out at us at all times, and people are gravitating to what they want to believe, not to what is really happening in the country. So I think it's a perfect storm.
And what about this conflation of that new news cycle through social media, through the metas of the world, through the TikToks, through Twitter, and this fictionalization of facts right in our face. Trump saying, for example, and social media, portion of social media that's supportive of Trump, saying, yeah, these guys climbing the walls of the U.S. Congress building in Washington, the Capitol building in Washington, were there as tourists.
Or they won't say they won't say exactly that. They'll say most of the people who were there were not violent. Most of the people were there as observers. And I want to say that if there's no Donald Trump, if he does not create that narrative that he won the election when he was told by experts that he had lost the election, if he had not embraced, I didn't lose, I won that election. Now, and then he gathers them on the very date by all manner of groups, from armed to those who were observers, and says to them, if you don't fight like hell, you won't have a country. He gathers them, he incites them, he says, I'll be there with you, and the only reason he wasn't is because the Secret Service wouldn't take him there, I guess. On the other hand, he goes home and he watches what went on the 6th as entertainment on television for hours and hours. I mean, what higher crime could a elected or candidate perpetrate against any democracy? There's no higher crime. I can't think of one. In other words, the will of the people is way second to his grab for political power, and he's been successful.
And it defies one of the cardinal principles of democracy, which is there be a peaceful transfer of power.
And there has always been.
If a democracy cannot accomplish a peaceful transition of power, then it's no more.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I think, and I guess that's why I wanted to speak about this. I mean, I don't know who's going to watch this, but I hope that it'll be somebody a long time from this. I've always said I'd love to know what Grandma thought back in the 1880s when she was a girl.
I thought you were going to start off by painting a picture of America forward in the next 50 years, because I do have a definite construct of that America.
I want to hear that.
I see the Trump eras, both from 2017 to 2021 and from 2025 to 2029 as an aberration, as
It's n-
as the death throes
yes,
of an old system
I
that
agree with that.
that has tried to sustain itself, maybe even a legacy of the 18th and 19th century, when we condoned a lot. We condoned human enslavement. We condoned
Painful transition.
unspeakable cruelty,
Yeah.
not just to enslaved people, but to women
Oh,
and children. We had to outlaw child labor. We had to do things, and even now in other parts of the world that haven't caught up, hundreds of miners in South Africa are trapped. They're not trapped underground. They're voluntarily mining abandoned mines of gold to get what they
to
can to
survive.
live on. And the authorities above ground, who don't want them in those mines because they've been officially declared abandoned, are not allowing their cohorts above ground to send them supplies. So they say, no, don't send them water. No, don't send them food. Make them go without lunch, dinner for days and days and days. And they're dying, but they're still down there. They won't come up because they have no livelihood above ground. And we have a system that is permitting that. Now, it's not the American system, but it's a relic of the old American system. But here's my point. My point is that this is the tail end of that era, that we are indeed entering a golden age, not only of America, but of the world,
Yes.
when there is gender equality, regardless of what we think of it as 20th century mindsets. There is inclusion, and the reason for that is people, is the demographics. Demo, meaning people, that when we were talking about it earlier, how our grandchildren are just as likely to marry somebody from a different race as they are of the same
Absolutely.
race, and that it's irrelevant because the children, the products of that,
The youngers.
the offspring of these mixed race unions are so enchanting. They're so beautiful.
Yeah.
They're so free of all of the allergies and congenital disorders that inbreeding tribally have made up of blacks, of whites. I mean, the Mormon Church, for example, which is in Utah, they already are suffering some serious problems. And I think we may have discussed that on tape. But I believe that in 100 to 200 years from now, there will be no issue of race, because Africa will be a continent that will look like America. China and Asia
It's
will
like
look like
it's
America.
like a stew, and we're stirring stuff into it, and pretty soon it's going to be one color instead of
that's
a
right.
streaked.
And you're going to have capitalism, I think, because you're going to have individuals and groups who will be incentivized to work harder and to have a better life materially than other groups. But it still will be a homogenous group of, at least genetically homogenous, far more. I mean, just look what's happened in our lifetime.
Oh,
I mean, and we've talked about this before. So I think we're on the cusp of that world. And if you've traveled recently in Western Europe, if you've traveled recently in Minnesota, in the heartland of America, or like I have in Idaho, where my grandnephews live, all of whom have married. They're classified on the census as African Americans, but they have not married African Americans who are so classified. They've married outside of that paradigm, and mine is just a small example of what's happening outside of the world. So that we're going to not by political will, but I think by the force of genetics,
natural
by
order,
natural, by natural, if you will, even natural selection, you could call it, a Darwinian, Spencerian imperative that
Race
we
and
move
race
toward
and gender
a
will not be
global
able to use
community.
as weapons.
It won't be. You know, we'll be a global
will not be
community.
weaponized.
And it's hard to imagine that
Yeah.
now for somebody, say for example, who's say 10 or 20 years older than us. We can, and because we've traveled. The problem with Donald Trump is he views the entire world from lenses unique to Mar-a-Lago. Has he ever been? He went abroad for the reopening of Ile de Cité in France, Notre Dame.
Yes.
That was the first time I can remember, other than the first trip he took abroad to Saudi Arabia, where he bowed to the king as if he were a waiter. As president of the United States, this macho, menacing guy stepping up to the king of Saudi Arabia and bowing. And Americans, including me, were chagrined.
But his son-in-law is now managing $2 billion, who has never been a manager before, and he's making $25 million a year.
Well, he not
I
only is
might
he
bow to that.
managing it, it was given to him by the crown prince to bail out his New York real estate holdings, and is the payoff for the Trump relationship with the royal family of Saudi Arabia. And I'm saying that publicly, and I think everybody knows it. Everybody knows that Trump is going to try to steal the country blind. He doesn't care. That's why he's surrounding himself with, Elon Musk.
There's an arrogance about him right now that is different than in 2016. I sense a presence which is way different than it was in 2000. In 2016, he wasn't sure what he was doing, and he had to have Kelly and Milley and all these people who knew what to do. He didn't have the sense to not have them. This time, he is stripping. He is stripping not only the people you might know by name, but thousands that you don't know by name who are competent, and he's going to replace them with people who are not only not competent, but they're only going to say, yeah, that's a good idea, boss.
And he's already started.
And he's doing it.
He's granted paid leave. In other words, I don't want you making any other decisions in this position while I find your replacement. So I'm giving you paid leave if you are an employee in a federal government that has something to do with the administration of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. You're no longer allowed to make decisions, and eventually you're going to be fired, and you're going to be replaced or retired, or somehow removed, and you're going to be replaced by MAGA loyalists.
And it's going to be really interesting. I work out.
Well,
with
it's not going to work. I mean,
I
that
hope it doesn't.
because he doesn't have the numbers, and I, I'm very much on that, in that part of political science that we experience at Whittier College, that are demographers that believe, when I read history, that so much is determined simply by the sheer force of numbers of people believing. And I think that's true for Christianity. Uh, I think it's true for world wars. I think it's true for the end of human enslavement. I think it's true for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm a person who Trump would call woke, and for me, woke means you understand a little bit about the history that has preceded us up to this point. And if you don't understand that, if you don't see how, in the words of Martin Luther King, whose birthday we celebrated 2 days ago, not so much, not so much this. And King didn't say it, and Obama used it in his stump speech.
What did he say?
But he said, you know, the moral arc of the
But it bends
universe
towards
is
justice,
long,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
it bends toward
Yeah.
justice.
Yeah.
And I believe that. I believe that things are getting better. You may not see them in a given generation. In fact, they may look like in certain generations that they're going back. Like now, it looks like we're retreating. But in the long run,
But not like they did
bends
in,
toward
in
justice.
Germany, where the Treaty of Versailles was so oppressive and awful that it made Hitler possible. Yeah, what's going on now with respect to sexuality, race, disparity of wealth, is these are tough things, and they're real, and it's awful to have to deal with them. However, I don't think that they're going to rise up a Hitler. I mean, there's no question in my mind that Trump would go as far in that direction as we would allow, but I don't think, like you say, the numbers are there that will allow that to happen, because it did in Germany, but I don't see it happening here.
Could you envision him, say, in year 3 of his presidency, being overthrown in the classic sense of being kicked out of office or assassinated?
No,
even?
well, perhaps assassinated. I was just talking to my doctor today, and I was carrying on as I want to do about this immigration thing. And my doctor looked at me and he said, someone's going to take him out. I don't know. I suppose that could happen. But if
And I hope it
J.D.
doesn't.
Vance is
And I hope
going
it
to take
doesn't.
his place. No, I
hope
do
it-
too.
I
don't
hope it
want
doesn't,
no.
because I would like to see it die out of its own force rather than artificially.
It'll elevate him rather than.
That's right. It'll make him a martyr.
Yeah.
And it'll make him a martyr in the wrong sense. And quite frankly, I think if Abraham Lincoln had not been assassinated, there wouldn't even have been an attempted Reconstruction. That his martyrdom made Reconstruction an idea that had some vitality.
Say that one more
after the
time. I
Civil
was thinking
War.
of something else. What did you just say?
I said that I don't think that Reconstruction would have been
Oh,
attempted.
you're talking about Lincoln.
Lincoln.
Okay,
If Lincoln had not been assassinated. Similarly, if King had not been assassinated, that we would not have an era that began after his death of incredible progress in race that every president, whether it was Johnson or Nixon or Carter, gave credence to, gave credibility to, that we are, all men are created equal, which is not a notion that was really that settled, but King's martyrdom helped it move that arc, that arc of justice in that direction. If it had not occurred, if that sacrifice had not been. It's just like Jesus Christ. It's Christianity all over again. And that's why the crucifixion, I think, is so crucial to the whole doctrine of Christianity. Is that this idea of sacrificing
Giving all
for values, and making that person the symbol of the kind of transition of values that one aspires to.
So, something that I've been thinking about for the last 30 minutes is you got to put that all in the context of, and I want to talk about the frog in the beaker. You know, they always talk about in science that you got a beaker that's heating up, and the frog is just really enjoying that nice warm water. And by the time that water gets so hot that he's going to lose everything, it's too late. And I think that climate change is real, and I don't think we've addressed it. And I hope it's not too late, because if it is too late, all of the optimism that you talk about, and I think it's there. And I guess I want to say this: Mom was born in '03. In 11, bicycle mechanics flew a couple of 747 wingspans in Kitty Hawk. What, 60 years later? 60 years later, the Eagle had landed. I mean, to go from there to there in 60 years is beyond belief, I think. And I want to say right now that with AI on the horizon, everything is happening so rapidly. I think that it's tough to have a cohesive society, and I think the disruption that climate change is going to mean by taking places that are livable, and they're not any longer going to get the rain they need, they're not going to have the crops they need, and I suppose we can also distribute. I understand all that, but I worry about if you think the border in South USA is a difficult thing, when huge populations have to migrate, I think the disruption of that. I'm wondering if any of this, if that golden age is going to be disrupted in a material, substantial way by us not heeding what a science is telling us with respect to climate change.
Well, but the bright side of that is, for example, the fact that Mao Zedong moved 450 million Chinese peasants off of subsistence farming into what are now the 10 largest cities in the world and counting.
At the cost of what, 20 million lives? And how many were they in?
That's the fact that's but they well, yeah, at the cost of 20 million lives, but how many more would have been lost if he hadn't? And that's just an example of how technology, and by comparison to 2024, a rather crude technology that doesn't necessarily have to sacrifice 20 million people. And artificial intelligence is a great thing because it will help us manage the effects of climate change. Now, whether we can actually stop and reverse the kind of climate and climatic events that are occurring, I don't know. I don't think so. But I think we will be able to transport water,
adapt,
and energy over far more and vast distances than we transport it now. So that a drought in Southern California is alleviated by turning on a spigot in Kansas City, Missouri.
Or transforming the ocean at our shore into what's usable. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't fear climate change.
It's a fair point.
I think to be a climate denier
Is
is, and be not only be a climate denier, but be a climate denier in a policy making position is a
not
bit criminal.
is not right.
Yeah, it's criminal.
This is a
Because
good conversation.
you're
Yeah.
costing lives, and these are the lives that you would include in that 20 million
Yeah.
victims of the Mao revolution in China.
Stan, I just have such respect for you, and I know you love me too, but man, I feel like I'm in the presence of a good thinker, and it's just so much fun. This is just great.
Well, the question is, how did we get there in our single-digit years, as you call them?
I don't know that.
It's something that we have. It's something that we're going to have to put over to our next session.
Next session.
Because and it's right that we do that, because the press of current events is so important to understand.
Yeah.
And it's going to
It might be interesting.
And it's going to influence how we look at those single-digit years. It influences me, and that's why I try to stay educated to what's going on in the media, and particularly to that generation of people, of Americans, that you and I have been referring to as our grandchildren. You know, and what they're thinking and the impacts on their thinking of what's happening now. I don't think
how is it going to manifest itself as immature?
I don't think they take Donald Trump very seriously. I mean, he's a joke. So one of the things when I've looked at his rallies, and in this last election cycle, I looked at as few Trump rallies as I possibly could. I was forced to look at what happened in Kentucky and the shooting and all that sort of stuff. But what I see in him through the eyes of a teenager is a stand-up comic.
It's wrestling.
It's WWF, you know, and he's a joke.
Yeah.
He's sitting there, he's talking.
No matter how bad anything is, in his
digressing.
mind, it'll be the best thing that any president
That's
ever
right.
did.
That's right.
And the ridiculousness of that on its face.
Right. Is
Yeah.
But and it's ludicrous, because and ridiculous and humorous. It's
I wish
funny,
I
and
could laugh.
I think the entertainment value that Donald Trump offers compared to a sleepy, a doddering old man like Joe Biden is remarkable, and it bears on the electorate and how one votes. But I cannot gainsay the fact that Donald Trump is entertaining, but not to be taken seriously, short term or long term.
Well, you remind me, I was telling you about that black banker that I work out with. And we talk all the time quietly together in the gym there. And he says, you know what? He says, I'm getting my popcorn. I'm going to sit back and I'm going to eat my popcorn and enjoy. I'm going to enjoy all of this. And that's kind of the same thing that you're saying. I think.
Well, it's like, you know, I go this weekend on television. I went from the divisional championships in the NFL to Donald Trump preparing for his inauguration, to the National Collegiate Championship games. Interchanging for the same reason. Their entertainment value. I had my bowl of popcorn. I'm watching the game, I'm watching Trump. I'm watching the games, I'm watching Trump. I'm watching Pat Mahomes.
Did you believe when he fell down and hit that guy in the letters as he was falling?
You know, great, because you can roar, you can clap. It'll get you up out of your seat. It'll wake you up from your nap. In the same way, Donald Trump can wake you up saying that he's going to sign, day one,
now, you know,
he's going to sign an executive order deporting every non-citizen, undocumented non-citizen of the United States
But the terror
Do
is
you
so...
know what that would do to this country?
To the business.
California,
business.
the California economy would collapse. I think within weeks, and the ripple effect of that across the country would be felt almost immediately.
Well,
And true with Texas and all the border states. And so you have to laugh because you know that that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You know, and I don't care how big of a scowl he gets on his face, and how many little sycophants he has around him clapping at every little utterance he makes. It's not going to happen.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to that. Let's see. I was going to say something else. I don't know what it was. Anyway,
And the humor for me is how he retreats, and how he explains why he couldn't deport.
Well, I got to say,
and why he couldn't.
I got to say,
separate families
the
at the border.
Yeah. If nothing else, when she said "Mr. President" and she gave her 6 or 7 minutes, and he had to sit there and watch it, and it was on the split screen, I'll kind of tuck that one away and bring it out to look. But I want to know about this.
That was at the Tuesday religious service.
Yeah, in
the day after
the National Cathedral.
Yeah.
Have you been there? That's a nice cathedral.
I have.
Okay, so what about the Ram game where the back is coming across in front of at a critical time, and the center hikes it and hits him in the belly, and I mean, how does that something
was
like
that the Ram game?
Yeah, did you see that?
I thought that was the Notre Dame game.
No, that was well, I thought it was the Ram game. Could have been the Notre Dame game. Okay, well, but Notre Dame lost, didn't they?
Right.
Maybe it was. Was that the
And the Rams lost.
And yeah, I know they both lost, and I didn't see either one of them particularly. But back I was in New Orleans when they were going to play the Cotton Bowl or whatever it was,
right.
Notre Dame and Georgia.
Right.
And I remember the Georgia fans had come into the cathedral, and I told them in no uncertain terms they were not allowed to pray for victory in a yeah. Carrie, come turn this stuff off. I think we're done.
Where are you going, Dad? What do you have going on?
Well, I kind of...
He's tired.
I don't want to...
He's been running his mouth nonstop.
Since
he came in the front door with
imagine me
a
running
carton,
my mouth.
a carton of his homemade soup.